Welcome to Titans of Terror, where we look at the men and women who have shaped the horror landscape. Today's subject, cinema pioneer F.W. Murnau. Friedrich Wilhelm Plump was born in Bielefeld, Germany on December 28, 1888. His father Heinrich owned a cloth factory in northwest Germany. From a young age, Friedrich obsessed over film and directed little plays in his villa. He would take the pseudonym of Murnau from the town of the same name where he lived. Murnau studied philology at the University in Berlin and later art history and literature at Heidelberg, where director Max Reinhardt saw him at a student's performance and recruited him to his actor school. During World War I, he served in the Imperial German Army, initially as an infantry company commander and communications officer, and later with the German Army's Flying Corps as an observer/gunner. He survived 8 crashes without any severe injuries. He was, however, arrested after landing in Switzerland and was interned for the remainder of the war. In his POW camp, he was involved with a prisoner theater group and wrote a film script. His friend and lover, the poet Hans Ehrenbaum Daigle, also served in the war, but was killed on the Eastern Front in 1915. This had a profound effect on Murnau, who drew from the horrors of loss, sacrifice, and the violence of war in his film work. After the war ended, Murnau returned to Germany, where he soon established his own film studio with actor Conrad Veidt. In 1919, Murnau made his first feature-length film, The Boy in Blue, also known as Emerald of Death. Thomas Gainsborough's painting The Blue Boy and Oscar Wilde's novel The Picture of Dorian Gray were inspirations for Murnau to create this film. As with many silent films, this one is considered lost, with only 35 small fragments ranging from 2 to 11 frames in length still surviving. His next film was 1920's Satanas, a 3-part historical film with the first episode taking place in ancient Egypt. The second is based on the Hugo novel, and the third episode takes place during the 1917 Russian Revolution. It was written by Robert Wiene, probably best known for directing The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Only a brief fragment of the film remains in the Cinémathèque Française film archive. Murnau made a few more films in 1920, including The Hunchback and the Dancer, which is about a repulsive hunchback becoming a ladies' man when he discovers a diamond mine in Java. The film was photographed by Karl Freund, who would go on to direct The Mummy with Boris Karloff. No surviving prints exist today. Murnau's fourth film, The Head of Janus, features Conrad Veidt in the leading role, with a supporting part from Bela Lugosi playing Veidt's butler. The film was an adaptation of Robert Louis Stevenson's 1886 novella, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Little is known of the production, but we do know that Jekyll becomes obsessed with a bust in an antique store with 2 faces, one beautiful and one horrible. Reviews at the time praised the incredible performance from Veidt, and the film achieved widespread success. Unfortunately, this film is among the most sought-after lost films. Murnau's last film of 1920 was a crime drama called Evening, Night, Morning, about a millionaire's girlfriend getting involved in a heist of a valuable pearl necklace. Conrad Veidt plays her brother and the impetus behind the heist. Murnau then directed 3 films in 1921. First up, we have Desire, starring Conrad Veidt. It tells the story of a male dancer who falls in love with the Grand Duchess, only to be arrested. After some time in prison, he escapes and begins searching for his lost love. No prints are known to exist. Next up, we have Journey into the Night, the oldest surviving Murnau film. The plot is a romantic melodrama, primarily involving an eye surgeon, a dancer, and a blind painter. Veidt plays the blind painter. Murnau then directed a murder mystery film entitled The Haunted Castle. A few aristocrats gather at a castle awaiting a baroness. An uninvited guest arrives in Count Auch, who everyone believes murdered his brother, the baroness's first husband, 3 years ago. The Count stays, arguing he is not the murderer and he will find the real one. The movie was shot in 16 days and released before the serialized novel's last chapter had been printed. 1922 was another big year for Murnau as he directed 4 feature films. First, he released Maritza, a drama about a beautiful potato picker dealing with smugglers and an old woman farm owner. Only a fragment of the first reel exists in the Cineteca Nacional Film Archive. Up next, Murnau released The Burning Soil, a drama that follows the struggle over a plot of petroleum-rich land. The film was considered lost until 1978, when it was discovered to have been owned by an Italian priest who organized screenings in mental hospitals. A restoration of the film was made with the assistance of French director Eric Romer. Also in 1922, Murnau unleashed Nosferatu, a symphony of horror, an unauthorized and unofficial adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula, starring German stage actor Max Schreck as the vampire Count Orlok. Even with several details altered, Stoker's heirs sued over the adaptation, and a court ruling ordered all copies of the film to be destroyed. Luckily, several prints of Nosferatu survived, and the film came to be regarded as an influential masterpiece of cinema and the horror genre. The studio behind Nosferatu, Prana Film, was a short-lived silent-era German film studio co-founded in 1921 by occultist artist Albin Grau. Although the studio's intent was to produce occult and supernatural-themed films, Nosferatu was its only production, as it declared bankruptcy shortly after the film's release. Murnau followed Nosferatu with Phantom, a surreal dreamlike romance about a shiftless young man becoming obsessed with a mysterious woman and yearning to find her again. Film critic Leonard Maltin called the film a poetic psychodrama. The film was thought to be lost for many years, but was restored by German film archivists and re-released in the US in September 2006. In 1923, Murnau made The Expulsion, about 2 couples involved in a melodramatic love affair. The film is now considered to be lost. Murnau changed gears a bit with the 1924 comedy The Finances of the Grand Duke, in which the likable and carefree Grand Duke of Abaco is in dire straits. A series of frantic chases, plots, and counterplots begin. Murnau's other 1924 film was The Last Laugh, starring the incomparable Emil Jannings. This is a chamber drama about an aging doorman being forced to face the scorn of his friends, neighbors, and society after being fired from his prestigious job at a luxurious hotel. A chamber drama follows the style of short, sparse plays of lower middle-class life that emphasizes the psychology of the characters rather than the sets and action. They tended to avoid intertitles of spoken dialogue that characterized most silent films, in the belief that the visuals themselves should carry most of the meaning. Thus, The Last Laugh uses only one title card throughout the film. The film was a major critical and financial success, and allowed Murnau to make 2 big-budget films shortly after. In 1926, Murnau gave us Tartuffe, about a young man showing his millionaire grandfather a film based on Moliere's Tartuffe, in order to expose the old man's hypocritical governess who covets his own inheritance. The film starred Emil Jannings, Lil Dagover, and Werner Krauss. Also in 1926, Murnau directed his last German film, the horror fantasy Faust, about the demon Mephisto making a bet with an archangel that he can corrupt a righteous man's soul and destroy in him what is divine. If he succeeds, the devil will win dominion over earth. Faust was a financial flop, and German critics disliked this adaptation. In later years, the film has been called one of the 7 canonical examples of German expressionist cinema, with a 2006 review in the New York Times calling it one of the most astonishing visual experiences the silent cinema has to offer. Murnau then made his American film debut in 1927 with Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. The film follows a married farmer who falls for a woman vacationing from the city, who tries to convince him to murder his wife in order to be with her. Sunrise won 3 Academy Awards at the first ever Academy Awards in 1929 for Unique and Artistic Picture, Best Actress in the Leading Role for Janet Gaynor's performance in the film, and Best Cinematography. The film is now widely considered a masterpiece and one of the greatest films ever made, with many calling it the greatest film of the silent era. Murnau followed up Sunrise with Four Devils, about four orphans becoming a high-wire act and encountering sinister goings-on at a circus. It was initially released without dialogue, with a synchronized music score and sound effects in October 1928, but because of the talkie picture craze, Fox pulled it from distribution and ordered sound to be added. A 25% talking version incorporating synchronized sound effects, music, and dialogue sequences was made without Murnau's cooperation. No copies of either version of the film are known to exist, and Four Devils remains among the most sought-after lost films of the early sound era. In 1930, Murnau shot City Girl, about a Chicago waitress falling in love with a Minnesota farmer and deciding to face a life in the country. Though shot as a silent feature, the film was refitted with some sound elements and released in 1930 as a sound film due to the public apathy to silent films. A forgotten copy of the silent version of this film was among those rescued from the Fox vaults in 1970 by Eileen Bowser of the Museum of Modern Art, and she screened it at the museum. The poor receptions of Four Devils and City Girl disillusioned Murnau, and he quit Fox to journey for a while in the South Pacific. Murnau eventually moved on to make his final feature, 1931's Taboo, A Story of the South Seas, a docufiction split into two chapters. The first, called Paradise, depicts the lives of two lovers on a South Seas island until they are forced to escape the island when the girl is chosen as a holy maid to the gods. The second chapter, Paradise Lost, depicts the couple's life on the colonized island and how they adapt to and are exploited by Western civilization. The film was co-written with documentary film pioneer Robert J. Flaherty and won the Academy Award for Best Cinematography. A week prior to the opening of the film Taboo, Murnau drove up the Pacific Coast Highway from Los Angeles, California, in a hired Packard touring car. Murnau's valet swerved to avoid a truck that unexpectedly veered into the northbound lane. The car overturned after striking an embankment, throwing all occupants out of the vehicle. Murnau suffered a head injury and died the next day, on March 11, 1931, at the Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. A service was held for Murnau at the Hollywood Lutheran Church 8 days later. His body was transported to Germany, where he was entombed near Berlin on April 13th. Among the attendees of his German funeral were Robert J. Flaherty, Emil Jannings, and Fritz Lang, who delivered the eulogy. Greta Garbo had a death mask of Murnau commissioned, which she kept on her desk during her years in Hollywood. In the year 2000, a fictionalized version of the making of Nosferatu called Shadow of the Vampire was released. In the film, Murnau is portrayed by John Malkovich. The Murnau character is so dedicated to making the film genuine that he actually hires a real-life vampire to play Count Orlok. In July of 2015, Murnau's grave was broken into with the skull removed by unknown persons. Some wax residue was reportedly found at the gravesite, leading some to speculate that an occult ceremony took place. As this disturbance was not an isolated incident, the cemetery managers were considering sealing the grave. The skull has not been recovered since. F.W. Murnau is regarded as one of the cinema's most influential filmmakers for his work in the silent era. Shockingly, only 12 of his films survive in their entirety. Nonetheless, Friedrich Wilhelm Murnau is not only a true titan of terror, but a true titan of cinema.